So we are back with my top 10 players at each and every position. I've done my point guards list and I've done my shooting guards list. I've made a playlist, the cards on the screen right about now if you missed those videos. And obviously, as you can see from the title and thumbnail, we're going to be ranking the top 10 small forwards in NBA history in this video. But I don't want to waste more time. Drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Let's just get started with number 10. Coming in to start us off, we have big game James Worthy. James Worthy is easily, in my opinion, one of the more underrated players in history, and I think the biggest reason why is fairly obvious. It's because he played with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Showtime Lakers. And when you're playing with two of arguably the top 5 players in NBA history, it's going to be very hard to get some recognition. But nonetheless, James Worthy still cemented himself by showing up in big games, hence his nickname, Big Game James. He's a 3-time champion, 7-time All-Star, made a couple of All-NBA teams as well, and actually he even captured a Finals MVP in 1988, and what he's more known for with that Finals MVP was his closeout game, as he along with LeBron James are the only players in NBA history to record a triple-double in a Game 7 of an NBA Finals. And something that a lot of people forget about James Worthy and Magic Johnson is that towards the end of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's career, they were really carrying him on the offensive end as he was obviously older. They were able to win a couple of championships with Kareem obviously out of his prime, and even when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar retired, they were still able to get back to the NBA Finals in 1991, where they lost to the Chicago Bulls led by Michael Jordan. So it's safe to say that Big Game James deserves this spot without question. Moving on to number 9, we have the human highlight film himself, Dominique Wilkins. Now, Dominique is definitely one of those players that when people look back in hindsight, they just say he was the Carmelo Anthony of his era, and I could definitely see the argument. He was a great scorer, but outside of his scoring, he didn't really give you that much. Defensively, he wasn't that great. He also wasn't that much of a playmaker. He was a solid rebounder in some years, I'll give him that, but yeah, that's really it. He has a scoring title and a bunch of other solid scoring seasons, but because he spent a majority of his career with the Atlanta Hawks and he didn't really lead them anywhere, didn't really have that much playoff success, he kind of just fades away into the background of NBA history and being relegated to being 9th on my top 10 small forwards. And honestly, you could really make an argument that he's 10th on this list, but I decided to give him the edge over James Worthy because he was clearly a better player than James Worthy, and I gotta give him props. Those dunks and posters, he was definitely posterizing some dudes back in the day. But aside from the posters and the nice scoring seasons, there just isn't that much to talk about, hence his spot on this list. But moving on to number 8, we have the one and only Elgin Baylor. Now, Elgin Baylor is not somebody of my time, obviously, so I can really just go off of the numbers and some of the footage that we have available. Elgin Baylor was easily one of the best scorers in NBA history, but unfortunately, he just was not a winner, as Elgin Baylor consistently underperformed in a lot of key games, especially in the NBA Finals, hence his finals record being 0-9, even teaming up with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain to create a super team that never panned out. But nonetheless, despite him not having a championship and underperforming in very key playoff games, he still put up some really monster scoring seasons. In his rookie year, to put into context, he averaged 25 points, and by his 3rd season, he was averaging 35 points, and in his 4th year, he averaged 38 points a game along with 13 rebounds. Yes, you heard me correctly, 38 points a game. It really is crazy to think about what the players ahead of their time in the 60s, the numbers that they were able to put up. But nonetheless, it was the 60s, context is needed, and the fact that those numbers never translated to a championship, I have to take that into consideration, hence him being number 8 on this list and no higher. Moving on to player number 7, we have the one and only Scottie Pippen. Now, Scottie Pippen is a very polarizing guy in the NBA community, as there really isn't no middle ground as it pertains to Scottie Pippen, as either you think Scottie Pippen was this top 5 player in the NBA that Michael Jordan could not win without by any means necessary, or you think Scottie Pippen was this bum that Michael Jordan carried to 6 championships. Now, I'm not going to get into that debate, as I've even made a video about that topic, but as it pertains to Scottie Pippen's career, he was easily one of the greatest defenders of all time, as it's even crazy to me and it blows my mind that Scottie never even won a Defensive Player of the Year award. But nonetheless, along with being an elite defender, rebounder, he was also a pretty good passer, as in both of the three-peats, Scottie Pippen led the Bulls in assists. But aside from the positive, there is a lot of negative with Scottie Pippen. For starters, in the half court, Scottie wasn't really that great. He wasn't a great shot creator, and though he was a decent three-point shooter for his era, it wasn't anything special. And that's really where Michael Jordan carried him in the half court setting. But aside from just his half court inabilities, in the playoffs, Scottie Pippen shrunk a lot more times than people talk about. As in the second three-peat, Scottie Pippen shot below 41% from the field and 29% from behind the arc on 5 attempts. And in 2 out of the 3 playoff runs in the second three-peat, he shot 64% in one of them and 68% in the other from the free throw line. And when you look at a lot of the key games that Scottie Pippen was in, I hate to say this, but he was getting carried by Michael Jordan as far as the scoring end goes. I'm not going to say it was a complete carry job because Scottie Pippen was still playmaking and he was giving you elite defense, but as far as scoring goes, Scottie was just not that good. I hate to say it. It doesn't mean he wasn't a great player, don't get me wrong, but when I look at those 6 championships, he was nowhere near the best player on those teams, and even in some of those final series, he wasn't even the second best player on the court. It's not a knock to him, he's still a top 10 small forward of all time, but he's not going to get any higher than 7th on my list. But moving on to the next player on this list, we have Hondo John Havlicek himself. 8-time NBA champion, multiple-time All-Star and All-NBA performer. Couple that with 8 all-defensive teams, and you would even think this guy is in the GOAT conversation, but once you factor in that he played in the 60s and 70s, 2 of the weakest eras of all time, you start to put some of those accolades and numbers in proper context. But nonetheless, it's not like I watched John Havlicek play. I only have some of the film and the numbers to back up my arguments here, but considering his resume and the fact that he was able to lead the Celtics to multiple championships even after Bill Russell retired, one of them being on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson's heads, I gotta say, that's number 6 worthy in my book. But moving on, as we finally enter our top 5, to start us off, we have Dr. J, Julius Erving himself. Dr. J is easily one of the most iconic players in the history of basketball. I mean, we all know his iconic dunks and plays. I don't have to run through them, but what I will run through is the fact that he was a champion in both the NBA and the ABA and an MVP in both of those leagues as well. And when you have a resume like that coupled with some All-NBAs and All-Star appearances, it's no shocker that he's in the top 5. But the reason why I can't put him any higher is because, one, he did have a really good team when he won the NBA. Some would say a super team, as Moses Malone came to join them, but also, let's just call a spade. He wasn't as dominant in the NBA as he was in the ABA, and that's just the facts. The numbers back that up, and even his resume backs that up. But nonetheless, still a great player. Like I said, he even won an MVP in the NBA. But yeah, I can't put him any higher than number 5 on my list. But moving on to player number 4, we have Kawhi Leonard, the Claw himself. Now, I'm assuming most that are watching this video know who Kawhi Leonard is, so I'll make this very brief. 2-time NBA champion, 2-time Finals MVP, multiple-time All-Star and All-NBA performer, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year back-to-back, I should add, and has 7 All-Defensive Team selections. But aside from his resume, Kawhi Leonard is known for being a lot of things. For starters, being one of the greatest playoff performers of all time, and I'm talking all-time great clutch performances year after year after year. We saw it in 2017 with the San Antonio Spurs, as he shot 50, 40, 90 throughout the entire playoffs. We saw it in 2019 with the Toronto Raptors, as he had one of the most iconic playoff runs in NBA history, and we even saw it just this past postseason with the Los Angeles Clippers, as if he hadn't gotten hurt, there's a good chance that they would be NBA champions. But aside from his clutch exploits, we all know the biggest thing about Kawhi's legacy is the fact that on the defensive end, he may be the greatest player of all time. Honestly, that's no exaggeration considering the rules and how they heavily favor offensive players nowadays. There's an argument that Kawhi Leonard is the greatest defender of all time, and him already being 4th on this list is a testament to just how good he's been in a very quick time period, I would say, because I could see Kawhi Leonard having a couple more years of elite play, so there's a chance that he could even rise higher on this list. But moving on to the top 3, coming in at number 3, we have Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper himself. Similar to Kawhi Leonard, I'm sure most of you that are watching know the resume: 2-time NBA champion, 2-time Finals MVP, former league MVP, multiple All-NBAs, RAs and All-Star appearances, a 4-time league scoring champion, and is known as one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. And in my opinion, I believe he is the best scorer to ever grace a basketball court, as there really is nothing Kevin Durant can't do. The handles of a guard, the elite post game, and he also has the ability to shoot that rivals some all-time greats. And even on the defensive end, he definitely is not the best player in the world, but his length makes it to where he can never be a liability. He's always a plus in some way, shape, or form, primarily with his ability to block shots. And with his career still being written, coming back from an Achilles injury and looking like the exact same player, if not better offensively, combine that with the fact that he's playing alongside Kyrie Irving and James Harden in Brooklyn, there's a good chance that there's multiple championships left in the tank, and he could climb even higher on this list. But moving on to number 2, we have Larry Bird himself, and this should be self-explanatory, similar to KD and Kawhi Leonard. There really wasn't anything that Larry Bird couldn't do on a basketball court, and he was so ahead of his time, as him alongside Magic Johnson really saved basketball in the 80s. One of the most skilled scorers in the history of the game, one of the best shooters of all time, even though his volume was obviously low, but considering his era, he definitely helped with the advancement of the three-point shot. Couple that with the fact that he is a 3-time NBA champion and 2-time finals MVP, and has 3 straight MVP awards, it should be no surprise why Larry Bird is second on my list. But moving on to number 1, was there any doubt? It is King James himself, LeBron James. Now, I feel stupid that I even have to explain this, but what can I even say? LeBron James, 4-time NBA champion, 4-time MVP, 2-time back-to-back MVP, and aside from his accolades, because I'm sure everybody that's watching this already knows them, the fact that he's even in the GOAT conversation already cements his spot as number 1 on this list. And if somehow you have an issue with this spot and you disagree, please, I'm begging you, for the sake of society, go and get tested for brain damage, because that's the only possible explanation. But that concludes this video. If you disagreed with anything that I said, let me know down below in the comment section, and also let me know your top 10 small forwards as well. I will interact with as many people as possible. Subscribe to the channel and press the bell for post notifications. Follow me on social media. The links are down below in the description box. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. Y'all stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.